Today, we're going to talk about securing files on your Mac. And there are many ways of securing files on your Mac. Um, the very first way is obviously password protecting your Mac. And we're going to spend a few minutes on that before we delve into protecting individual files. But, a lot of people go, well, why do I need to do this? And honestly, one example came to me. I was working on a computer, one of the few times that I've worked at a corporate. And I sent a job to the printer. I got up to go to the printer, picked up my document and came back. In the 90 seconds or so that I've been away from my desk, somebody had taken a document. Oh, by the way, I just left my machine running open as it was. Somebody had brought a bunch of files to my desk and dropped them on my desk, and they put them on my keyboard. And I came back, and all of a sudden my word processing document had 200 pages of the question mark letter, because they dropped the documents on my keyboard and it was typing for me. And that was the last time I left my desk with my keyboard unsecured. It's just really something as simple as that. Could have, if I had the document selected, it could have wiped it. There's a whole bunch of things that could have happened. So the security of your computer is not just necessarily for people who are snooping. It could be accidental things that can happen to your computer. So I'm going to share my screen and let's get going. As I said before, the most important thing about securing your computer is having a secure password for your computer. I know one or two people who have the letter A or the number 1 on their computer. The security of your computer, if somebody has physical access to your computer, all bets are off. So it's a decent idea to have a reasonable password to it. Now, if you wanted to make sure that accidents don't happen, the first thing you can do is when the screensaver kicks in, you can set it so that it won't unlock without a password. So if we go into System Preferences and we go to Security and Privacy, we can require a password after sleep or the screensaver begins. And you can set that time, because sometimes you're working on a piece of paper and you come back and your computer's locked and you don't want to type a password every time. So you can say, okay, let the screensaver run for 5 minutes, for 15 minutes, or immediately, depending on the sensitivity of your machine. And then after the computer wakes up from sleep, it'll prompt you for a password. So that's the first thing that you can do to secure your computer. And it's probably a good idea to do that. If you've got an Apple Watch, you can use it to unlock it so that it's not that much of a schlep to actually have to type in the password. You don't do that anymore because your Apple Watch will unlock your computer for you. The next thing that you can do is when you step away from your computer, you can go to the Apple menu and you can choose Lock Screen. And if I choose Lock Screen, this is exactly the same as kicking in the screensaver with a password protection. If I choose Lock Screen, I go into the lock screen and I now have to enter my password. Now, I'm very fortunate. I've got a Touch ID Mac, so I can just go over and touch the iPad and it unlocks my screen for me. I'm ready to go. So this is one way of making sure that accidents don't happen on your computer. If I have a document open, it won't accidentally get destroyed if somebody drops a bunch of files on my keyboard. As you know, we're all into keyboard shortcuts, so you can see that the keyboard shortcut for lock screen is Control-Command-Q. So if I hold Control-Command-Q down, straight into lock screen as well. And this time I'll type in my password to show I've got a nice long secure password, and that will lock my screen and my files are secure. The final way is under Big Sur. If you go to your fast user switching, or if you're using Mojave or earlier and you've got fast user switching turned on over here, if you've got multiple accounts, you can literally click on the little icon and you can go to the login window. Now, this won't log you out of your existing account, but it will open up the login screen and you need to type your password again. Any programs that we're running will stay running. It just, as far as Zoom goes, your screen will freeze, so I don't necessarily want to do that over here, but that will lock and secure your computer as well. Okay, so what if we want to protect files? So some programs give you the ability to password protect files. So if I go to Pages, here's one of the files that we use for preparing, this is last week's Meet Big Sur presentation, and I want to secure this file. So if I go to my file menu, there's an option to set the password. So I choose set password, and it asks me for a password. I'm going to do a very simple one at the moment. This is exactly the same as setting up a password for your computer. You can put a hint if you want to, and you can also set it so that it'll open with Touch ID if you have a Mac that supports Touch ID. I'm going to switch it off for the moment, and I'm going to click Set Password. So I'm going to close this document down, and now if I go to Pages and I choose Open Recent and I choose that same document, I'm prompted to set a password. Now, if I leave Open with Touch ID set over there, let's see what happens. Let's type 1234, which was my password for that. And there's my document. Now I'm going to close that document again and open it again. And this time, because I told it that it could use Touch ID, I'm just going to reach across and touch, it opens up my document as well. So that's pretty nice. I can secure individual documents. Just to show you something, Owen, at this point, I just want to remove the password because I don't particularly want that done. So in order to do that, I have to have a password. Let's put the old password in there. I'm just going to remove the password. And now that's no longer password protected. And I can just open that document as and when I want to. If I go to another Pages document over here, this is a document that we're working on internally. This is another Pages document, and I want to password protect this. I go to File, but there's no set password option over here. The reason why this is happening is because if you look carefully in the toolbar, this is a collaborative document. And when you're collaborating with somebody else in a document, when you start the collaboration, you're prompted with a question that says, do you want to protect this with the password, or do you want anybody who's got the link to be able to open it? So this has actually taken the password protection away from the individual file and turned it into the collaborative file, so that if I'm sharing this with 2 to 15 to 30 people, I don't have to distribute the password, or I don't have to necessarily set it for each individual person. I'm setting it once, and that document is managed by everybody. Now notice Numbers doesn't do it quite the same way. I'm not quite sure why, because I opened up a collaborative document and there was a set password option over there. So I just didn't want you to go into a scenario where you're working in Pages and you go to set the password and there's nothing there. If it's missing in Pages, have a look to see if it's a collaborative document, and then through the collaboration tools, you can actually go in and manage it. Now, I can't do it on this one because I'm not the owner in this particular one, but these are the permissions that are set for this particular collaborative document. Okay, so that's Pages. Microsoft Word is another one of those programs that will allow you to password protect your documents. So if I go to Word and I make a new document, you've got a document here. And in Word, if I go to the Review tab, you'll see there's an option to protect the document. And in true Microsoft style, you can not only protect the document, but you can protect the document for all sorts of things. You can stop people making comments, turning it into read only. There is just so much stuff that you can do, mind boggles. But if this stuff is important to you, then this is important stuff. So you could set a password for this file. Once again, I don't necessarily need to demonstrate this, but it now has a password attached to it. And this document will not open unless I set that password. So that's saving and creating passwords on individual documents. Now, what if I want to password protect a whole bunch of documents? I've got a folder full of documents that I want to protect. There is no built-in mechanism on the Mac to password protect folders on your machine. And there are some tools that we can use. And the one is one that you've probably been using quite a lot. And this is the utility called Disk Utility. Now, I'm sure many of you have downloaded applications from the web and installed using this Disk Utility. Here's an app on my desktop, LastPass. We did the passwords workshop last week. And if I double click on LastPass, it opens up, if we look down here, it opens up a virtual disk, which is showing the contents of this document. So this is a nice, easy way to compress a bunch of files, bunch of disparate information, turn it into a single file that you can distribute over the internet or put onto a memory stick and share with people. If I right click on here, you'll see it behaves just like a disk. So I can eject it and the icon disappears from the desktop. If I double click it again, it pops straight back up onto the desktop. So I'll just eject that one more time. But we can make these ourselves, and we make them by using the application disk utility. So if I switch to disk utility, here we have disk utility. It shows you all the drives that are mounted. So this is my computer hard drive, my Macintosh HD. This is the external drive, this little guy over here, which I use for my media files. And I can use disk utility to make these disk images. So there's a couple of ways of doing it. I've got a folder here called Mac Integration Basics. If I look inside it, you'll see that there are 4 files in there, 3 PDFs and one Keynote document. Let's just view them as icons. Okay, 3 PDFs, 1 Keynote presentation. So if I want to turn that into a single file, I can, in disk utility, go File, New Image, and I can make a blank image. But what we're going to do first time is we're going to make an image from a folder. So I'm going to make a new image from a folder. Here's my open dialog box. I'm going to choose Mac Integration Basics, click Choose. And it asks me where I want to save that folder, and I can change the name of it if I wanted to. And over here, we have the option to encrypt it. So encryption being the password protected so that somebody can't, or at least that's one of the tools. I suppose you could encrypt something without a password, but what we're looking at is the password. 128-bit encryption is going to be more than enough for most of us. If you work for the CIA or the FBI or MI5, you might want to do 256-bit encryption, but this is going to be good for almost everybody. You're prompted for a password. If you remember the a password session we did, you've got access to the little password assistant that will generate passwords for you if you wanted to. I'm just going to use a very simple password over here. I'm going to click choose. So this is encrypted. And we can also choose what the format of that disk is. So in this case, it could be read only, so no one could ever change it. We could compress it. Then we could also turn it into read, write, a DVD, CD master, or a hybrid image. I'll deal with these 3 when we get to the next step, but for the moment, I'm just going to leave it as a compressed file, and I'm going to not make it read only. So let's choose save, and it's creating a folder disk image called Mac Integration Basics. You can see it building it on the desktop. Operation successful, and here's the document, okay? And if I double click on it, password. And now I get a virtual disk. And this looks just like a USB disk or an external disk on my computer, but it's showing me the contents of this. And all of these files are now password protected because this file is password protected. So I now have a secure file that I could send to somebody. I could then phone them up and say the password for this is 1234. You don't have to send the password with that file. And this way, those files are secure. If I'm finished with it, I can just eject it. Now, I'm going to throw this guy away for the moment because I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. Do a new image from a folder. Choose the same file. And once again, I'm going to encrypt it. But this time, I'm going to make it read-write. Okay, let's click save. And it'll go through the process again. Operation successful. And there's my file. But here's the difference. Now that I've made it read-write, I can copy files to it. So there's exactly the same files that you saw in the folder from the original Mac Integration Basics. There's my original folder. There's my virtual disk. But now I can open up another folder and I can take these images and I can just drag them in there. And there they are. And now if I eject this, remember it behaves just like a disk. The next time I open that disk image, again, it's still password protected. there are the additional files that I've put in here. So now that we've got a disk image, we've actually got one that we can modify on the fly. Every time we open it up and every time we eject it, it's automatically saved. I could once again, I could delete those files, close it up, empty the bin. And when I eject that, next time I open that, they're my files, they're nice and protected. So one of the problems we got by doing it this way, by making a disk image from a folder, is that the disk image that it makes is pretty much the size of the folder or maybe a little bit bigger. So one of the other options that we've got is that we can actually make a blank disk image. So if we go to new image, blank image, it opens up the same dialog box, and down here we have a number of additional options. So one of the things we can do is we can give the name of the image to be different from the name of the disk, the virtual disk, as it appears. So I want to make a new disk image, and I want it to be, let's say, 700 megabytes, because back in the day I might have wanted to burn it to a DVD, and I knew that when I filled up this disk image, then there was enough information to burn a DVD. I didn't have to go backwards and forwards to look at the folder to see how big it was when I couldn't copy any more information into the disk image. I knew it was full and I could burn a DVD. So let's call this Jan Archives. So that's what the name of the document as it'll be saved. And we'll call the disk image backups. Now, over here, we can actually adjust the size of the disk image that we're going to make. So I'm going to make this one 700 megabytes. We can also adjust the format. Now, APFS is a new disk format that Apple introduced with the last 2 or 3 versions of the operating system. So if you're creating this and only using it on your computer and APFS is available, you can happily go ahead and use it as APFS. But if you want to share it with somebody who might have an older Mac, you might want to save it in the older, or create the disk image in the older format. And if you want to share it with a Windows user or a Linux user, I believe that Windows also uses exFAT, you could choose these two. If you know what these are about, then they're important to you. I guess if you're just a Mac user, if you're just using it for yourself and you see APFS, that's fine. Don't worry about case sensitive. If you want to share it with somebody with an older Mac, then use Mac OS Extended Journaled, also known as HFS. So I'm going to make this one Mac OS Extended Journaled. Now, once again, we can still encrypt it. I'll go for 128. Let's give it a password. And over here, you've seen how we could do a read-write disk image, but we have another 2 options over here, a sparse disk and a sparse bundle disk. Now, the benefit of making a sparse disk or a sparse bundle disk is that if I make a 700 megabyte disk image, if I just use a read and write disk image or a DVD CD masker, the document I save, even though it's empty, will take up 700 megabytes in this case on the hard drive. On the other hand, if I make a sparse disk image, it will make a disk image, well, we'll see exactly, but I guess it'll probably be about 20 megabytes on the disk. And as I start adding information into it, it will start to grow until it hits the limit of 700 megabytes, at which point it won't be able to grow any bigger. It'll say it's full, and then you back it up, throw it away, do whatever it is that you want to do with it. So let's make this one 700 megabytes, and we'll make it a sparse disk image. Let's click Save to Desktop. And it says operation is successful, we're done. So here's my Jan Archives disk image. Let's do a get info. And here you can see, okay, it's taking 42 megabytes, not the 700 megabytes that we said it was going to take. It's mounted the virtual disk already. So I'm going to open that up. As you can see, it's completely empty. And I'm going to take some files and just drag them in there. And they're copying across. There we go. There's my first set of information. That was 270 meg. Let's take another folder and drag that in there. And what else have we got? Let's take something in here. Take a few files. Drag them in there. And if we view this as a list, you can see that we've got quite a lot of files in here. I can eject this disk now. still got my original disk image here. Double click it, password protected. There it is. Let's open it up. And there's all the files that I copied there before. I can add some more files to it. So if we go into T2 again, and let's take these 3 files. No, that won't work because that's already 600 megabytes. But let's take these files, drag them in. We've now got more information in there. We can eject this. Double click it again. Password. If I was secure enough, I could remember it in my keychain, but it kind of defeats the purpose of this because if it's stored in the keychain, it'll automatically open. And if you're concerned about protecting the files on your machine, it's probably not a good idea. So let's click OK. There's my disk image. And again, it's a little messy, but we'll view it as a list. And all the files that I've copied in here so far are in here. And now I can use this to my heart's content, eject it when I'm done. Remember, when it's sitting on your desktop, it's an open file available to everybody. So it's still really important that you have the security set on your computer. If you walk away from the computer, you might want the screensaver to kick in. You might want to lock the screen. But if it's ejected, the only way anybody can get into those files is by double clicking on that and typing in the password and mounting the disk, and now we can work on these files. So I could open up this, this document. It's a PDF. Take a second or two to open up. There we go. There's my document. I could work on it. I could copy and print it. It behaves just like a normal file, but it's sitting in a virtual disk as opposed to an encrypted, password-protected virtual disk. The other thing that was useful about the Sparse bundle versus the let's just bring the options up again. The Sparse disk versus Sparse bundle disk. This is getting a little bit on the technical side, so forgive me. But if you had a Sparse disk image, if you went to Time Machine, it would always back up the whole thing. If you had a Sparse bundle disk image, it would create that disk image, and to us, it would look like a single file. But to the computer, it would be broken up into several slices. And when you wanted to back up the Time Machine, instead of backing up the whole thing, it would just back up the part that had changed. So it would save you storage when you came to using your backup software. And when it came to building the disk image again, whether it was to burn a DVD or to just copy the files off, it would put it back together for you. So I'm very confused about why that one didn't work, but I must have made a mistake when I was setting it up. I'm pretty sure there aren't any bugs in that software. So that's disk utility, and building these disk images is a really wonderful way of securing your files and working. There are, if you're not happy working in the disk utility app, there was a third-party app called Knox, as in Fort Knox, K-N-O-X, that I installed on my wife's machine, and it will build the disk images for you. It will mount them automatically. It's a little menu bar item. I'll put the URL into the mailer when I send the mailer out either today or tomorrow with the information about the recordings that we've got. Okay, last thing I want to cover, let's just eject, is the other option that we've got is that I'm sure you're all familiar with this. I can take this file and I can compress it. So if I right click on it and I choose compress, I can turn it into a smaller file size that I can, let's just do a get info, that I can send over the internet. All the files that are inside this zip archive reflect the contents of this folder, but instead of taking 31 megs, it takes 27 megs. So I'm getting what, about a, I don't know, 12% reduction in file size. The only problem is that if I double click on it, it opens straight up. There's a copy of it, right? So that's not particularly helpful. We want to protect our files. Now, again, this is for either the super brave of you or the foolhardy, but you can actually encrypt disk images. One of the things about the Mac operating system is it's built on this very powerful Unix system, and not all of the operating system is exposed in the graphic user interface. So I'm going to show you how to compress a file using the terminal. If you're interested, I don't expect you to take it all right down now, but you can go back to the recording and view it. So we've got the terminal open over here. And the terminal is a fairly daunting little application to those of you who are used to a graphic user interface. But just to show you very briefly, this shows me who the user is and the computer that I'm working on, and it shows me what directory I'm sitting on. You can see I'm in the desktop. If I want to see what's on the desktop, I can just type ls, which means list, and -l to give it a list in a list format. And you can see over here, I've got some hidden files, I've got some documents, I've got artwork, there's artwork, I've got Mac integration basics, LastPass, tidyme. This is all alphabetical. What's new screenshots, what new screenshots. So all of these files are reflected inside here. Now, I don't profess to teach you how to use the terminal right now, but we're in the appropriate directory, and I want to compress the Mac integration basics over here. And it's a very, very simple command that we use to compress it. The command is zip, and we type a space, and most Unix commands have got several arguments or flags that you can put at the end of them. So I'm going to say, you always start your flags with a minus. I want you to encrypt it. And because this is a folder, I want you to go inside this folder. R stands for recursive. So if this is not just a document, if it's a folder, I want you to go inside it and do everything that you need to do until the job is done. Now, I have to tell it what the name of the file I want at the end of the day is. So let's just say this is, what's it called? Mac integration basics. So I'll just call it MIB. Another space, and now I have to type the exact name of the folder that I want to compress. Integration basics, and because there's spaces in the name, I have to surround it by quotes. Otherwise, Unix thinks that that's one folder and that's another and that's another. If I hit return now, because I've told it to encrypt the file, I can just type in the password. It'll prompt me to verify that password. And now you'll see all of the files that were in there being compressed. And I now have a zip file on the desktop called mib zip. Now, if I want to decompress that, it wants a password. And hit return. And there we go. There's Mac integration basics. There's the files that have been decompressed. So a bunch of ways of doing it. If you need to have zip files that you want to encrypt them, you do them through the terminal. If that's all you ever do in the terminal, you'll get really good at doing it. It's just like one trick pony, but it does that job really, really well. So that's the end of securing the files presentation that I've got for you today. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and hand it over to you guys to see if you have any questions. Oh, Michael.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I lost you in the first sentence, but this is a little bit overwhelming for me, so I'm going to have to watch it again. But am I right in understanding this? What we're doing is we are protecting selected files on my hard drive. So if there are certain files, obviously there's an overall password to get into the machine. Now somebody gets into the machine and now they say, oh, I want to look at these files. I could take, say, for example, my property file and protect that entire file.
Protect the entire file or folder?
Folder. I mean the folder. Sorry.
Yeah. So if you wanted to do that, if there was an element of concern, it would be quite feasible for you to take that folder and turn it into a disk image, which was password protected, because the Mac is really good at protecting the entire machine. Right? That's your user password that you use when you log onto your computer. You can also protect your machine by taking the screensaver or just locking your screen while you walk away from it. But if you don't have any of those things and somebody has access to your computer, then all bets are off. So I showed you that you could protect individual files, but not every application gives you the ability to protect those files. The Microsoft products do, the Apple products do, but I don't think you can protect a Photoshop file, for example. And so the way of getting around that is to make a disk image, and you could literally You know, when you start up the computer in the morning, you can set login items that open, so applications that open up automatically when you start the computer up. You could make a disk image of your properties folder, and then drop that image into the startup items of your account. So every time you started up your computer, it would try open it up. It would prompt you for your password, and then you'd have on your desktop something that looked like an external drive. And if you'd given it enough space so that it grows, so that you can carry on working with it, then you just work with it as if it was a traditional part of your computer. Looks like an external drive, but really it's just a file sitting on your computer, and it will be backed up with everything else just like it's been done before.
Okay, that's absolutely fantastic. So, because I leave my laptop at the office sometimes, and that's fine, and I'm not that I have any concerns, but I would really like, because to have my property files, which are the ones that my partner and I work on, locked up, so I don't have to worry, because people have other access to it for other reasons. So I would then, well, I have to study this, but I could then take all my property files, open another drive. What did you call it? A external drive,
Image.
or like a disk image, and then make it big enough. Everything I do gets filed to that automatically, and only I can access that with my own password.
Correct.
Right, and any files that I create, or any files I create within the folder will automatically go all the time into that. It's always going to be.
They'd be password protected. Look, if you walk away from your computer and you've got that disk image mounted, then people have access.
Yes. If it's on
it's just
yes.
If it's open on your desktop and your computer isn't password protected.
Right.
So yeah, you still need to exert a certain element of security.
Okay. Now I will practice with that. But great. That's actually brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you feel a little bit nervous about creating these disk images, I do encourage you to look up Knox. Just Google Knox disk images. I'm pretty sure you'll find it, but I'll find the link and I'll put it into the email that I'll send out over the next 24 hours.
All right, wonderful. Yeah, now I need to practice a little bit, but because I did lose you, I'm afraid. But I get the idea. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, thank you very much.
Great. Well, I hope it was useful to you guys. I had a little bit of fun preparing for it. Disappointed that my disk utility thing didn't work. I'm gonna have to go back and see what I did wrong. I'm gonna have to watch the recording. But this is something we do all the time, or I do all the time, and it's super, super useful. There are actually techniques, sorry, just on that same topic, is I know some people who will make these disk images, and then they'll make those disk images invisible, so that you go into a folder, it's just not there, or it doesn't appear to be there, and then you can make it visible by, well, there's techniques. So if that's something that's useful and interesting to you, give us a shout. Angelo and I would be happy to show you how to do it.
Fantastic, thank you.
Great. Well, thanks very much, everybody. The mailer with next month's schedule is going to go out tomorrow. We've set the schedule up. We're all ready to go, and we're looking forward to it. And there's a GarageBand thing there just for you, Michael.
Thank you, sir.
It's a pleasure. Awesome. Great, guys. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Thanks, Angela. Bye.